Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. We have a traffic alert for you tonight. Authorities have shut down both directions of the 163 near Fashion Valley Mall after crews cut through a gas line at a Mission Valley intersection. That has led to a traffic jam on several freeways. We check in now with KPBS reporter Steve Walsh for more. Steve?
Well, that's right, Ebony. I'm actually standing right here on Friars Road, which is completely shut down. I'm right in front of Fashion Valley. If you look right up the road here at the intersection of the 163, you can sometimes see a little bit of dust flaring up. That's from the broken gas main. To talk a little bit about what's happening, though, we've got Joe Britton, who's a spokesperson for SDG&E. So, Joe, what happened?
So at about 10:45 this morning, we received a call about a gas leak in the vicinity of Friars Road here in Mission Valley and State Route 163. Our crews responded quickly, and they've been working to control the gas leak. It looks like right now what occurred is a third-party contractor inadvertently struck that 20-inch gas line.
There's a project going on, the Friars Road widening project?
Yeah, I believe it's a City of San Diego, the Friars Road widening project that's occurring here.
All right. And so how big is the evacuation at this point?
So my understanding from the fire department is the evacuation zone was about approximately a half mile. But I would defer to the fire department to talk specifics about exactly who's evacuated.
All right. So you had to evacuate Fashion Valley Mall right in front of us, and how many other people?
So just for saying public safety is our highest priority. The fire department is the one that controls the evacuations. We've been working in partnership with the fire department, with Caltrans, the CHP, the police department, for public safety purposes to bring this gas leak under control.
And how soon? How soon do you think you'll have this under control?
So we don't have an estimated time right now. Our crews are working to lower the pressure in that pipeline to zero. Once that happens, our crews will make a determination on safety and then go in and assess the damage, and then they'll have a sense of how long it'll take to make these repairs.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Joe. And so earlier I talked to a spokesperson for CHP about the traffic situation.
We're going to have residual backup on every other freeway, so the people that normally take the 163 are now having to take other arteries like the 805 or the 15, even the 5. So we're going to have a tremendous backup on all those freeways. The best thing at this point is understand that you're going to be in some traffic today, probably more than normal, and to pack your patience and just understand that it's going to be a little while before you get home.
Is there any way around this at this point? It seems...
No, I mean, unfortunately, like I said...
All right, and so as they were saying, they really don't know exactly when this is going to be over. First, they have to control this gas main, and then they can reopen everything to traffic. Reporting from Friars Road in front of Fashion Valley Mall, Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Sounds like a mess. Thanks, Steve. U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is telling California, we have a problem. That's his message to law enforcement officers today at a conference in Sacramento. He explained why the Justice Department sued California for its new sanctuary state law. His office is trying to stop the Golden State from extending protections to people living and working in the U.S. illegally.
So California absolutely, it appears to me, is using every power it has, powers it doesn't have, to frustrate federal law enforcement. So you can be sure I'm going to use every power I have to stop that. We are going to fight these irrational, unfair, unconstitutional policies that have been imposed on you and your officers, on our federal officers.
Hundreds of protesters gathered in downtown Sacramento to voice their opposition to the Justice Department lawsuit, while in San Diego, immigration advocates expressed concerns over the U.S. Attorney General's pledge to use overstepping power. And KPBS reporter Susan Murphy has this part of the story.
A crowd of protesters in Sacramento marched around the hotel where Sessions was speaking. They chanted and held signs saying, "Go home, Jeff." Among the protesters were San Diego Assembly members Todd Gloria and Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher. In a statement, Gloria said, "Protecting California's immigrant communities is not extreme. It's doing our job as public officials to keep our residents safe." Governor Jerry Brown also lashed out and accused Sessions of lying and conducting a political stunt. Brown is named in the suit for signing measures into law that established California as a sanctuary state for immigrants.
We want to protect our citizens from criminals. We want to protect people from improper abuse of the law. That's what it's about here.
California Attorney General Javier Becerra is also named for filing more than 24 lawsuits challenging the Trump administration's immigration policies.
Here in California, we respect the law and the Constitution. We expect the federal government to do the same. As I've said many times, our state laws work in concert with federal laws. And our state law enforcement officials work in concert with federal law enforcement officials every day.
Immigrant rights organizations across San Diego County are expressing concerns that the lawsuit threatens to overstep the Constitution. Andrea Guerrero is executive director of Alliance San Diego. She says San Diego County's 250,000 undocumented immigrants have been under attack all year, and this puts them at even greater risk.
What Jeff Sessions wants is to be able to use local and state police to do his bidding, to do his work, to act as a deportation officer. That's federal law, those are federal rules, and those are based on excessive powers that bypass our Fourth Amendment protections.
Guerrero says San Diego immigration advocates will work together to push for policies rooted in compassion and human rights. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
President Trump is urging Latino business leaders to push Democrats towards immigration reform. He told a coalition of leaders in Washington, D.C. today that party politics was holding up efforts to help young immigrants and the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA.
And we're trying to have a DACA victory for everybody, by the way, and the Democrats are nowhere to be found. They're nowhere to be found. It's really terrible. We're ready. You know the expression, ready, willing, and able. We're ready, willing, and able. They are nowhere to be found.
His executive order that called for ending DACA last Monday is currently being challenged in court. Next week, the president will visit San Diego to inspect a key component of his border security plan. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders says he will examine the border wall prototypes. The head of the U.S. International Boundary and Water Commission was in San Diego this week talking about the cross-border sewage problem. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson says the federal agency was sued last week for not fixing a decades-long problem.
The IBWC chief, Ed Drusina, met with Mexican officials to talk about improvements to the Tijuana sewage system. Several projects worth several $1 million each are aimed at dealing with the crisis by improving pump and pipe systems. But U.S. EPA officials said last summer it'll cost more than $400 million to fix that city's sewage infrastructure. Imperial Beach, Chula Vista, and the Port of San Diego filed suit against the IBWC in an effort to stop the decades of renegade sewage flows. Imperial Beach Mayor Serge Dedina spearheaded the effort to sue the federal government.
Well, we have a legal, ethical, and moral responsibility to make sure that our constituents, our residents, and the people of the United States have access to clean beaches 365 days a year. More importantly, that national security personnel, such as our Border Patrol agents and our Navy SEALs who are flying all over the world to fight the bad guys, don't get sick from toxic waste and sewage.
Cross-border sewage flows have already forced public health officials to close the town's South County beaches for more than half of 2018 and hundreds of more days over the past few years. Local officials say that's unacceptable. Now, the lawsuit was filed last week. It's expected to be assigned to a judge soon. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
The NRC has agreed to consider licensing an interim storage site for nuclear waste in New Mexico. KPBS reporter Allison St. John says Congress has failed to agree on a permanent storage site for nuclear waste, and now the private sector is taking matters into its own hands.
It's a ray of hope for the people fighting to find an alternative to burying spent nuclear fuel rods 100 feet from the beach at San Onofre, a process that is currently underway. Eddie Lee Energy Alliance in New Mexico is ready and willing to accept nuclear waste. Holtec, the company that designed the latest waste storage at San Onofre, applied for a license last spring to build an interim storage site in New Mexico. Now, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has agreed to begin technical review of that license application. John Heaton, chair of Eddy Energy, says there are many power plants around the nation waiting for a safe place to store their nuclear waste. But he says if the license is granted, Holtec may have a say in which nuclear waste gets priority.
You are on the ocean front, and you also are in a very seismically unstable area, as well as being in a high-density population area. Those things, I think, would play into the decision-making about which fuel goes first.
Heaton says Congress has refused to consider interim storage sites like the one in New Mexico and refused to release billions of dollars originally intended for the now stalled permanent storage site at Yucca Mountain. He says if Congress sees there's a site licensed and ready to go, that could change their minds. It may take the Nuclear Regulatory Commission several years to approve a license for the interim storage in New Mexico, but Heaton says he hopes it's approved by 2020. Allison St. John, KPBS News.
Friday is the filing deadline to run for one of San Diego County's 5 congressional seats. So KPBS media partner iNewsSource looked into how often incumbents vote with and against their party. iNewsSource reporter Jill Castellano has more.
Democratic Congressman Scott Peters stands out when it comes to his voting record. Peters, who is running for re-election, has voted against his party 13.6% of the time since the start of last year. That's more than twice as often as San Diego County's other House members. Most notably, Peters has gone against Democrats on net neutrality and trade votes. Here's what he had to say about his voting record.
I think that my constituents want me to be independent, and that means that I'm not going to Washington to be part of one of the 2 partisan armies.
Peters' district also plays a role in how he votes. It is almost evenly divided among Democrats, Republicans, and those not registered with a political party. If you want to see how often your House member toes the party line, you can go to inewssource.org for a searchable database. For KPBS, I'm iNewsSource reporter Jill Castellano.
iNewsSource is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. We showed you a special type of transplant is saving lives. Now, KPBS's Maya Trabolsi shows us why some argue the strict regulation of human stool may be limiting access to health.
A fecal microbiota transplantation, or FMT, saved Robert Hyde's life.
I have prayed that God would open up an avenue for me to talk about this.
He battled a drug-resistant bacterial infection called C. diff for 4 years, costing him thousands of dollars in medication costs. But the fecal transplant? That was a different story.
When I had the fecal transplant in the hospital, my bill was $0.
But what if you've got something else that may respond to a fecal transplant?
16 years ago, I was diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease.
Joel Spreckman runs an intestinal health community resource called One Great Gut in San Diego. Because he suffers from inflammatory bowel disease and not C. diff, he couldn't get the transplant he wanted in the United States due to FDA guidelines in place since 2013.
I love my country. But if I can't get the treatment I need here, I have to go elsewhere.
He went to Australia to get a series of 10 transplants. In this picture, he is doing a handstand to keep one of the treatments inside his body.
I've probably never experienced such potent medicine so quickly.
But the financial burden was too great to continue therapy.
It was probably in excess of $13,000.
His condition worsened, at one point dropping in weight to 115 pounds. He even imagined suicide.
I can wrap my hand around it and my fingers touch.
I've had many stool tests just to see what's going on, to check it out, and every time I hope that I have C. diff. Because then it can be paid for. I can get the fecal transplant. That's very helpful.
Dr. Michael Lejeune at Sharp Grossmont Hospital says fecal matter is regulated as a drug in the name of safety.
We don't want to use something and figure out later that it has risks. So everything has to run, and we have a very respected agency, which is the FDA.
The FDA considers the use of FMT to be experimental and generally bans its use outside of approved trials. But it does allow it in the case of C. diff infections if other treatments aren't working, in what they call enforcement discretion.
And I get to say, yes, I can use this therapy to treat you. Thank you, FDA.
Dr. Mark Davis is a naturopathic doctor who specializes in fecal transplantation. He believes its use needs to be broadened.
It's a lot safer than any of the drugs and more effective. That's the bottom line.
Dr. Davis says before the FDA restrictions took effect, he used FMT for patients with several chronic intestinal conditions.
What did you end up having for lunch?
He was in San Diego for my interview on his way back from Baja California, where he consulted at a retreat that offered medically supervised fecal transplants for people who couldn't get them here. The patient cost for the retreat? $15,000 for a 2-week stay.
The people who go to these retreats are people who feel like they don't have any other options. They're people who feel like they've tried everything in conventional medicine, and often people who feel like they've tried everything in alternative medicine.
At his practice in Maryland, Dr. Davis says patients who can't afford retreats still plead with him for help in spite of FDA rules.
I have had people try and bribe me or say, can we skirt the law somehow? But I don't love the law, but I follow it. So.
But there is something he says he can legally do to help.
You can do it at home. We can screen the donor. When they come up clear, you can collect their stool, you can process it and self-administer it, and it's not really harder than following most kitchen recipes at home.
So it's like cooking?
Yeah, it's a lot like cooking.
I understand the pain and suffering that patients go through, and the answer, though, is not in trying something that is not at least shown to be effective in their condition.
Back at Sharp Grossmont Hospital, infectious disease specialist Dr. Fadi Haddad argues right now there just isn't enough evidence to support the use of FMT for conditions other than C. diff.
We have to take our time and get the right studies, the right research, the right donors, the right bacteria, and make the right conclusions.
But it could be years before FMT is approved for other conditions. Joel Spreckman says he and others like him feel they are running low on options.
People are going to do it at home, unsupervised, highly risky, putting themselves and their family at risk, all because of these silly rules and regulations.
Feces is a stinky, messy, magical mass of microbes. People who have been sick, who say, you know, the minuscule chance of an adverse event happening from FMT is absolutely worth it to me in order to get the potential benefit from this therapy.
For Robert and Nadine Hyde, the evidence is clear. As both friend and foe, bacteria has the power to take away
Safe again.
or give life. Maya Trabulsi, KPBS News.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Now, this is the type of weather we expect here in San Diego. A warm, mild, and pleasant winter day. Julia Wyden has more in tonight's forecast.
Well, good evening. It's been a pretty gorgeous day so far, and as we go through these next few days, I think we'll continue with that really nice, pleasant feel. Temperatures will be above average. We'll have a lot of sun through our weekdays. Once we get into the weekend, however, that's when the chance for showers is going to come back into our neighborhood. Let's go ahead and take a look at our satellite and radar. And if you look farther off to the north, you can see those flecks of green up on your screen. There's a much higher chance for rain in northern and central California, but around here in Southern California, we really have not had too many problems. There's that bigger batch of wet weather that you can see to the north of LA and all the way up towards San Francisco. Expecting to continue to see the threat for showers in that region, and up in the Sierras looking at possible snow as well. But again, Southern California should be doing just fine. I think we'll have some high clouds passing on through from time to time as we go through the rest of the week, but generally a dry forecast here in San Diego County. So for tonight, expect to see temperatures dropping down to the low 50s. You can expect to see those numbers a little cooler up towards Oceanside at 44 degrees. For tomorrow, we'll have warm air in place. Again, your temperatures running above average for this time of year with your highs generally in the upper 60s to 70s. Now, showers are expected up towards San Francisco, so if you're traveling in that direction, be mindful. Again, looking at 60s and 70s across the region for your Thursday. Into the weekend, an area of low pressure moves closer to us, and that brings back the threat for some showers. That will be for both Saturday and for Sunday at the coast. But your temperature is still above average for this time of year. We're normally around the low to mid 60s. Inland, looking at wet weather on Saturday, 67 degrees then. And your forecast in the mountain region calls for a little bit of afternoon rain. At the deserts, we'll be in the low 70s on Saturday with afternoon showers and a shower or two remaining on Sunday. Back to you, Ebony.
Local success stories in business return to where it all started today on the campus of SDSU. The university's Entrepreneurship Day features companies started by current students and recent alumni. One of those companies is Pura Vida Bracelets, which was launched when the founders were studying at SDSU.
It's good to get involved on campus. You never know where these connections are going to lead you, and maybe you sit down and you talk to your professor after class, and then it turns into a mentor, and then your idea actually booms and it turns into a big thing like Pura Vida.
San Diego State estimates it's helped produce more than 100 companies over the past 10 years through its Entrepreneurship Center and Launchpad program. The Pillsbury Doughboy secret deodorant, the U.S. Army, one woman is behind these successful ad campaigns. Carol Williams has worked for decades to market products to more diverse audiences. KQED producer Monica Lamb talked to her about her career.
Carol Williams, CEO and Advertising Hall of Famer, thanks for talking with me.
Thank you, I'm honored.
Well, you are known in the advertising world for a campaign you did for the deodorant Secret. The tagline was,
"Strong enough for a man, but made for a woman."
I need my secret.
Oh, Dad spray isn't good enough for you.
How did you come up with that?
It was one of those times as a creative when you recognize how women are looked at versus who women actually are. In the media, they were consistently portrayed as weak individuals. They had no need of an efficacious antiperspirant.
A man, a woman. Both work hard, both perspire.
Yet the women that I knew, those women sweat. Whether it was in the workplace or with their families, they were working 24/7. And at the end of the day, they wanted to look good.
And still feel dry like a woman. pH Balance Secret.
So you didn't just change perceptions of the product, you also changed how women looked at themselves.
Absolutely, that's what it's about. That campaign opened the door to begin a history of advertising that speaks to the strength of women. That door was first opened with Strong Enough for a Man, but Made for a Woman.
You made a series of videos for the Army.
I was one of those guys who didn't think the Army had anything for me.
What was your assignment there?
The United States Army had once enjoyed very high participation from African Americans. So the effort was to make African Americans aware of the benefits of the United States Army.
I was surprised at what I found in being an officer and at what the Army helped bring out of me.
What educational benefits, what occupational training was available, where even after their tenure in the Army, they would be able to come out and have viable jobs.
How do you get a brand or a product to speak to somebody? How do you get them to say, that's my brand, that's my product?
We did an ad for Disney.
Grandpa, let me tell you about my trip. I went to a safari.
Disney was very, very interested in increasing African American presence in their parks.
Imagination, inspiring imagination.
They really thought it was a price thing. We looked at it, we recognized that it was bigger than that. We really talked about how Disney infused your child with knowledge.
Next time, will you come with me?
Come live your dream. Disney Parks.
You produced a series of videos for the YMCA about water safety, and it was targeted at multicultural kids. Why did you feel it was important to do that?
Young black men were dying at disproportionate numbers, especially in urban areas, not being exposed to swimming pools or swimming lessons. Less African American women were dying of that issue, and I think that's because the way we perceive ourselves in our hair, we were just naturally saying, nah, we We're not going in the pool, thank you very much. We'll just stay on the sidelines with the swimming pool and look good.
Everybody actually can learn how to swim.
So YMCA engaged us to help get this message out. The importance of learning how to swim and dispelling the myth that African Americans can't swim. Anybody can swim if you learn how to swim. I am more than honored to have this special recognition.
How did it feel to be inducted into the Advertising Hall of Fame?
Being inducted into the Advertising Hall of Fame was the most incredible experience that I had had. We'll see the magic that once made this industry great. As an African American woman, I just put my head down and enjoyed what I did.
Gotta go. Keeping up. It takes hard work.
And then to be able to portray African Americans through my eyes as I know them, what a magnificent thing to be able to do. It's been a great journey.
Well, congratulations again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.